Hi everyone, my name is Luisela. I'm the job coach from Nationality Service Center or NSC. Today's video is going to be very interesting. It's going to provide a lot of good information for you all. And for today's video, we have a very special guest speaker, which is one of the guest speakers at Job Club. Her name is Beth Perkins. She works for a tech company that is located in Philadelphia called O3 World. And she is currently working as a people growth manager. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for wanting to participate in this video.
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. So today's video, like we talked before, since you are an active HR member from a private company and part of your background as well is in human resources, to me, it makes sense to talk about a couple of things that are part of the job cycle here in the United States and kind of like provide some insight to our NSC clients, since most of them, I cannot say all of them, but lots of them are in the process of looking for jobs, or there's also a group of NSC clients who are working, but they're trying to get a job upgrade. So I think it makes sense to start talking about professional networking. What is professional networking, and how you as an American and HR professional here in the United States can define professional networking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think my view of what is networking has changed a lot over the years. When I was in college, I always thought it was just going into a room full of like 100 people wearing suits and trying to give away as many business cards as you could, right? And so, but when you do it that way, you have like a 1-minute interaction with 100 people. You don't, at the end of the day, you don't remember anyone you talk to. No one you talk to really remembers you. There wasn't a lot of value in those conversations. Okay. So I now think of networking as having one meaningful conversation. And that could be with a relative or a family member, right? It could be with a friend of a friend. It could be with someone you currently work with. It could be somebody at NSC. Like, I think that networking is really about sharing what you're looking for, sort of a little bit about who you are and what you're looking for, and kind of seeing if that opens up a door where that person might be able to help. And I think as you grow in your career, then you get to be the person who can help other people, and people want to network with you to say, you know, I'm really interested in your industry. Can you tell me more about what you do and how you got into it? And then you get to share your knowledge too. So networking definitely, you don't always know what the benefit is going to be, if you're going to benefit them or if they're going to benefit you, or maybe you both benefit each other. But I think it's all about kind of introducing yourself, talking about who you are, what you're looking for in your career, what types of jobs you're interested in, and they may be able to help.
So based on what you're saying, so there's like, it seems like there's two ways of doing professional networking. Like first go to like an event that is being organized only, you know, for a specific population, so they can go there and do that. Networking.
Absolutely.
So that would be like the first
that's definitely, yeah, and that's a great way, especially if you have a specific type of industry or type of job, and you can find an event where people who have that kind of job or work in that industry are all gathering together. It's a great opportunity to meet some people who work in the industry that you want to get into. But when you go to those events, rather than saying, I want to meet everyone in this room, see if you can just meet a few people, but have a longer conversation with them. So rather than talking to 10 people for 1 minute each, talk to 2 people for like 10 minutes each, right? Like try to spend a little more time, get to know them, and they're more likely to remember you if they spend a little more time talking to you. Yeah. You know, I know I struggle to remember people that are just like, hi, my name is Amanda, and then they walk away. I probably don't remember Amanda a week later. But if Amanda's like, hi, my name's Amanda, I'm really interested in human resources. I see you've been working in that field for 10 years. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you got into it? now we're having a conversation. I can share my story. I can ask Amanda what her story is, what she's looking to do. And now I remember her a week later. And so you never know, maybe I'm looking to hire somebody for my team. I'm going to call that Amanda person that I just met. Or maybe I go and I meet a friend for lunch next week. And my friend says, hey, my husband's company is looking for an HR associate. Do you know anybody? And I'm like, actually, I just met a person who seems perfect. Let me introduce you.
So that would be the other way to networking, like you said, like through friends or coworkers or ex colleagues or classmates. So do you feel like one is better than the other one, or you think they both provide the same opportunity?
I think they both have benefits. I mean, I think for people who are new to networking, the going to an event and meeting people can feel really scary because it's a room full of strangers. And that can feel very vulnerable and scary and awkward. So sometimes if you're new to networking, it helps to start with where you're most comfortable. So start with friends, neighbors, family, people that you already have a relationship with and a little bit of trust with. And practice talking about what you're looking for in your career and see if there's ways that they might be able to help you. And once you start to get good at talking about what you're looking for in your career, then practice on, while you're getting your hair cut. And tell the stylist, because you always want to chat, talk about what you're looking for in your career. You don't know, that stylist may be married to somebody who works in your field, may have a sister or a best friend who works in that field. You never know who people know. And so I really do feel, though, in my experience, that people genuinely want to help. And so if you give them an opportunity to help by saying, here's what I'm looking for, do you know anyone, or do you know anything about this industry? If they do, they're going to want to help. They'll make the introduction, they'll share their knowledge. And the worst that can happen really is they're like, no, I don't know anybody in that industry. I'm sorry, I can't help. But you still got something out of that because you got to practice networking.
So not necessarily, based on what you're saying, not necessarily that person, that connection is gonna get you the job you're looking for, but can provide good information, important information, key information that might actually help you to get that job.
Right, so sometimes they help you get the job, and that's great. Sometimes they help you get information that helps you get the job, or they help by introducing you to somebody who then introduces you to another person who gives you the information who helps you get the job. So sometimes there's a lot of steps in networking. It's almost like a little bit of a maze where you follow this path and then you get pulled over here. And but if you keep going, there's always kind of something at the end.
Yeah, that's true. Would you also say that people network not only for finding a job, but for other reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think finding a job is great, but sometimes once you have that job, depending on what your job is, networking can be a part of your job. So my job in human resources, a part of what I do is recruiting, which is finding people to work for my company. And that's all networking. So I've had a lot of practice because it's been a part of my job for so long that networking is just like, I'm kind of always doing it and I don't realize it. It's hard to turn off now. But because I'm always like, okay, well, tell me more about you. And maybe you'll be a good person to work at my company, or maybe I can introduce you to one of my friends who might know, or maybe what you do is super interesting and I want to learn more about it. And maybe your company becomes a client. You never know what the connection is going to be. But I think that the conversation always pays off, whether you make a new friend or you find a job or you learn something new or you get exposed to a new industry or maybe a new kind of job that you didn't know existed. Sometimes you learn about new jobs just by talking to people who have a job that you've never heard of before.
Yeah, true. Which actually that would mean like it will help you to refer or get referred.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, which is actually getting a job through a referral is actually one of the ways to get a job. or filling a position if you are a recruiter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of companies will offer their employees a monetary bonus for referrals. So at the company where I work, if you refer someone and we hire them to a role, you get a cash bonus for making that connection. So sometimes networking can end in a little bit of a bonus too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I have heard that a lot, like a lot of companies have uh like a referral system, something like that, and they provide money if, like, if they ended up hiring that person who this current employee refers.
Yep.
Do you have any like real example of networking, and because that through networking that person was able to get a job? You don't need to share like a name or
Yeah.
anything,
I
but
mean, actually, that person is me.
oh wow, that's great.
In the last 10 years, I have only gotten one job because I applied for it.
Wow, that says a lot.
And yeah, so most of the jobs that I've had in the last 10 years came to me through people that I know, through people that I met at events. So where I work right now,
Wow, that's amazing.
I met the CEO at an event like 6 years ago. And we connected on LinkedIn, and we didn't talk a lot, but we were connected. We stayed in touch, and kind of I was following the company and seeing them grow. And then one day they reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for somebody to kind of head up all of this talent and people stuff. Do you want to have a conversation about it? And the rest is history. But they, like, I never applied for the job. They reached out to me because I had networked with them.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
I
So
had networked with them 6 years before. So, I may have thought that networking, oh, nothing, like that wasn't really networking. Nothing ever happened with that. Six
yeah.
years later, I end up getting a new job because of something so long ago. So that's why I say, like, I really believe that all networking counts. You just don't know when it's going to count.
Yeah, exactly. When it's gonna pay off, right? It doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It makes sense. It doesn't necessarily it's gonna pay off like at that moment right now, but maybe in the future it will, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of cool. So you're kind of like the live example, success
Yeah.
story, like how networking can actually pay off. That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that story. So you were just talking about LinkedIn. So that leads me to the next question. So if I'm a person who kind of like feel intimidated to go to an event that is focused on that, on networking, how do I have any platform that I can use and do it online, trying to get connections and know people online instead of me having to go to this conference room at this hotel in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn is probably one of the best platforms for that. And it's free to use.
What
So
would be the best way to kind of like get benefits out of
there's a lot of
being?
different ways. So one thing that I've done myself and encourage people to do is, if you're interested in whether it's a specific company or a specific type of job or a specific industry, try to find people on LinkedIn who have that job or work for that company or in that industry, and send them a message, send them a request to connect, saying, I see that you work at this company or this industry, whatever it is that you're interested in. I see you work in this industry. I'm really interested in working in that industry. Is there any way you'd be willing to maybe get on a phone call and talk to me a little bit about how you got into that industry, or what experience you needed to succeed there, or what that company looks for when they hire new team members. And again, if people can help, a lot of the times they want to, especially if it's easy, if it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, you just want to hop on a phone call and talk about the thing that I know the most about, which is the job that I do every day. Sure, that's easy. I can do that.
Yeah, that's true. So one things that I tend to hear a lot uh, is that people recommend, or experts recommend, that if you're looking for jobs and you're using LinkedIn, so you see the job opening, you know, like sometimes, I know it's not all the time, but lots a lot of times you get to see that job posting, and then the person who is hiring, whatever the role is, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
can be that can vary, right? So I keep I keep getting this information. Like if you, one of the smart things to do is to apply, and after you apply, go and contact that hiring manager, and kind of like try, ask for like a request, so they can, you guys can connect each other and say like, yeah, I applied for this job. I noticed that you are in charge of this to hire this position. Da da da. Do you think that really works? You as a person who recruits.
I think it can help, honestly. Now, if you,
I mean, from the recruiter point of view.
yeah, from the recruiter point of view, I like it. And I think some recruiters might say, oh, I'm so busy. These are so many messages. Like, I don't have time to read them. So it kind of depends. But I think that from like the candidate's point of view, if you're looking for a job and you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn saying, hey, you're the hiring manager, I applied for this job, I'm really interested, I would love to talk to you. If they don't respond, don't take it personally, because there may be like 200 other people who
Doing the
applied
same.
out and sent the message, and they just don't have time to respond to each person on LinkedIn. And they're like, okay, that's great, I'm glad you contacted me, but I'm just going to look at your resume. And if your resume and experience are a good fit, I'll contact you anyways. So definitely, I would say it does not hurt to contact the hiring manager or the recruiter. And sometimes it can help. So I don't think there's anything bad about it. And sometimes there's a benefit to it.
So do you think it's like better to do it than not to? Because
I
there's
think
like,
so.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so. And sometimes something that I've seen people doing a lot recently in the last couple of years is not just contacting the hiring manager, but trying to find people who sort of have that job. So, you know, if we hire like if we're hiring a software developer and you apply, you might reach out to the director of engineering, who's like the hiring manager for that role. But you might also look at our website and figure out who the other software developers are, and find one of them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I just applied to work on your team. Would you be willing to get on a phone call to tell me a little bit more about your role there? Because I'm interested in working on that team and I'd like to learn what the job is like. So people are starting to do that too.
Yeah, I think this is the first time that I hear that. But it's very interesting.
It is. And again, the worst thing that can really happen is that that person doesn't respond to you. And that's okay. You didn't lose anything if they don't respond.
Yeah, and I guess from like the hiring manager slash recruiter point of view, that speaks like good about you, right? Like you're trying to be proactive and you're trying to take seriously these positions that you just applied.
Yeah.
I guess.
I will say one thing that's very important when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn is to just be very clear about what you're asking.
Okay.
So are you asking me to meet you for coffee? Are you asking me to call you on the phone? Are you asking me to send you more information about the company? Like, what specifically are you asking me to do? And I'm much more likely to do it if I know specifically what you're looking for. So if your request is kind of vague, it's harder for me to know what you want. So just know what you want and be really specific in that. And they may say, no, I can't do that, or I'm too busy, but you didn't lose anything from asking.
Yeah. That's true.
The time they'll say yes.
Yeah. You never know when the door is gonna open for you, right?
Right. Exactly.
Do you have any like online resource, any website that you know of that kind of like provides more insight about professional networking in general?
There's definitely, I mean, LinkedIn has its own blog where they publish articles. So I would say that's a pretty good resource to check out the LinkedIn blog, because LinkedIn is all about networking.
Yes.
So a lot of their content is about networking.
That's true. I love calling LinkedIn the Facebook for professionals.
Yeah,
that's pretty much
Facebook for your job.
Yeah. So I think we can switch now to very hot topic. I would say like for everybody. You don't need to be an immigrant or refugee or for American looking for jobs here in the US, and it's job interviews.
Yeah.
There's so I don't even I cannot even imagine like how many articles, videos that talk about job interviews in United States.
Oh yeah.
It is crazy, and the examples and tips and recommendations. Why do you think why do you think is such a, I don't know, such a discuss, and there's so many debates about job interviews in the United States? I don't think I have heard so much like in other countries. Obviously, I haven't lived in that many countries, but I think there's like a lot of myths about job interviews in the US and the way companies handle it.
I think that's partially because there's not just like one way, right? So some companies, when they interview, they have a list of questions and they ask the exact same questions in the exact same order to every single person.
You
Some
think that that's a
companies,
good thing, or
I
it's a
think
bad
it's
thing?
I think it's a good thing, honestly,
You
because
think?
it makes the process very fair and consistent. You know that you're being asked, you're being evaluated on the exact same criteria that everyone else is. So if you get the
Okay.
job, it's because you're the best match, and if you don't, it's because someone else was a better match. But some companies aren't structured like that, and they just sort of make it up as they go along. That definitely opens up the possibility for bias and unfairness in the hiring process. And it's not always easy to know when you're the being interviewed, sort of, if that's happening or not. But yeah, sometimes they totally make it up. Sometimes I think that they're like companies like Google and Facebook and Apple got really famous in the last couple decades for asking like intentionally difficult questions, like, how many toothpicks are there in the city of Chicago?
Oh wow.
Right? Like, how do you, and they want to see you, like, hear how you reason it out, but it's an intentionally really difficult question and no one
Yeah.
knows like what the answer is. And so like sometimes they're almost trying to trick you, which feels weird. So I think that's part of why there's so much content online about how to do well in a job interview, is because there's so many different approaches to how we interview people in the US.
By the way, what is your perspective uh, about those type of questions? Do you agree when companies do that?
No, I don't. I don't. I mean,
Do you
I think
think,
that,
that can actually it, it it could improve like the performance of the candidate
you know,
during the job interview, or all the country?
I don't know what the question's answer is supposed to tell us about you. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to learn. You know, in a job interview, really, we're supposed to be learning, are you a fit for this job? Do you have the skills and experience that is needed to succeed in this job? And I
Yeah.
don't know of any job that is counting toothpicks in Chicago. So it's not, it just seems not relevant to me. And I also feel like being in a, like, I've interviewed like hundreds of candidates. I've been in so many interviews on both sides of the table. But when I'm being interviewed for a new job, I'm still really nervous.
Yeah.
Like, being interviewed, everyone gets really nervous. And so asking a question that's impossible to answer only makes you more nervous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
It cannot help.
it feels unfair. It feels really unfair. So I
Yeah.
think it's best to sort of say, what are the questions that we need to ask in order to learn the information we need to know to make a decision?
Yeah. Yeah. Which actually think I there I have seen like for the past few years I have also seen companies who kind of like agree with that perspective that you have. And now when you go and visit their websites and you go to the career section, you tend to see like they provide so much information about the hiring process they have, or the onboarding, the benefits, the culture, the mission, the values, and even they explain to you the interview technique that they use. One of the
Right.
companies I can actually recall is Marriott. They even explain to you star technique is what we use, and this is the way we're expecting you to answer the questions. I think I
I
really
think that's
like,
great.
yeah, I really like it. Because I mean, if you're a company, and this is a personal, obviously a personal decision, this is not job coach, but it's my personal decision. I really think companies, if you are looking for people and you're looking for talented people, so I think it's wise to provide as much information as possible so you can bring those people who are kind of, they're not going to be the same, but who are going to share those values and principles that you have as a company, because at the end of the day, companies are like a person itself with personality and everything, right?
Right. Well, and also if you get the job, you're going to have onboarding, you're going to have training, we're going to tell you what the expectations are. And so why wouldn't we start the interview process by sort of giving you a little bit of training and telling you what the expectations are so that you can succeed?
Yeah,
Like I think that the best companies are companies that want people to succeed in the interview and not companies that want to sort of trick you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit and talk about like the very basic. What is a job interview?
What is a job interview? It can be a lot of different things sometimes, but basically it is an assessment of your skills and experience and comparing those to the requirements for the job and seeing, is there a match? It can be on the phone. It can be on video like we're doing now.
Yeah.
It could be in person. Sometimes you meet with one person. Sometimes you meet with many people. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Sometimes they might have you do like a task or a project or some kind of work to show what you are able to do. Like I have a lot of friends who are chefs, and if you want a job as a chef in a kitchen, they will have you actually come in and cook in the kitchen because they want to see, can you cook?
It
And
makes
it's
sense.
easier to see if you can cook by watching you do it than by asking you questions about cooking.
Yeah, true. So let me ask you something. So what do you think now that you just mentioned, like there's like different ways for getting interviewed. So you're talking about there's a phone interview, it can be also a video interview, in-person interview. What is the main purpose of the phone interview? There's any difference between the phone interview versus the video or in-person interview?
Yeah, usually the phone interview is usually more like checking off boxes. So they'll ask questions like, are you legally able to work in the US? Are you physically able to do the demands of this job, especially for jobs that might be in retail or in restaurants or in warehouses where you're not just sitting at a desk, you're moving your body, you're carrying things. They want to make sure that you physically are able to do the job. They'll probably ask you about your experience. So talk about your resume. I see you worked here. Tell me about that. What were the requirements of that job? What were your job responsibilities? So it's usually just sort of kind of talking through your background and very quickly sort of checking the boxes of the job requires this. Can you do that? The job requires this. Can you do that?
So as a recruiter, that will help you to kind of like narrow down the pool of candidates that you have screened
Exactly.
their resumes.
So like if we have 100 people who apply for the job, we look at their resumes first, and anyone who doesn't have the experience. So let's say we're hiring a chef again, right? That's easy because everybody knows what a chef does.
Yeah.
And like,
so
we're hiring a chef, 100 people apply. So I look at all of those resumes and I see that 20 of these people have only ever worked as airline pilots. I'm like, well, they don't have experience as a chef. They're a pilot. So I put them over here. They're not a fit for the chef job.
So that's kind of like the first phase, right?
Sort of like the first phase, I just look at resumes and I take out anybody who really doesn't meet any of the qualifications for the job.
What is the term that you guys use for that?
We call it dispositioning.
Okay.
And a lot of times we'll keep those resumes on file because even though you weren't a fit for this job, as we have other jobs that come up, you might be a fit for something else. So we want to keep you on file so that when there's new needs, we might reach back out and say, hey, you applied for a job here 6 months ago. it wasn't a fit, but we have this other job now as a pilot, and would you like to come back and interview for that? So even when you get a rejection letter, it doesn't always mean, it just means no for right now. It doesn't always mean no forever.
Yeah, or for at least like that position in particular,
exactly,
you're not the best.
So yeah.
So the second phase would be the phone interview then.
The second phase would be the phone interview. So everybody that we have left in the pile, we set up phone calls. Depending, it could be anywhere from 10 minutes to around 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like how normally.
Usually the first phone call isn't usually more than 30 minutes. It could be, but that's not very common. So usually it's like 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Should a job seeker or potential candidate, should that person get prepared as much as we should get prepared for an in-person interview?
Absolutely, absolutely. You don't necessarily need to put on the full suit if it's on the phone, but but sometimes it helps, honestly, even if the interviewer can't see you, it helps to like get dressed and you know feel like strong and powerful for that phone call, because it puts you in a different mood. If you're when you're like wearing your dirty sweatpants versus when you're wearing like your really nice outfit, you feel different. So even if it's on the phone, I always try to like get a little dressed up for my phone interviews. It just kind of tricks my brain into feeling more professional.
Yeah, that's a very fun.
You should also, for the phone interview, make sure you know what company you're talking to. Go to their website, read about what they do. If they have values or mission on their website, that's always great to look at. If you can see examples of their work, that's great to look at. If you can see like where their closest locations are, just whatever information you can learn about the company. It definitely helps to show the interviewer that you're really interested in this job, that you want to work with them, and not just like, oh, I need any job and I don't care where it is.
What would be the questions that are right to ask, like from the job seeker or potential candidate standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very simple, but I think the best questions to ask are the questions you really are curious about. I will say, like, if you Google what questions should I ask in a job interview, we will know that you Googled. We hear those questions so much and they just never sound authentic. It always sort of sounds like you're asking someone else's question.
Okay.
So that's why I always encourage people to really take a look at the company and try to understand what they do, because as you do that, questions will come to you. You'll be at their website. You're like, okay, so it seems like they're a restaurant, but I can't tell if it's just one restaurant or if they have many locations. That's a question. Now you have a question that you really want to know the answer to, that you can ask.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think doing the research helps you to have really good questions to ask. But I do think there are some sort of like standard questions. A lot of times you'll get these answers, whether from the recruiter on the phone call or in some sort of email communication, but you can ask about what the schedule for the job is. Like a lot of jobs in an office are pretty standard, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. But if you're working in retail or a restaurant or other industries, you might have a different schedule each week. So you can ask about that. Because you want to make sure, I mean, everybody has other stuff going on in their lives. They have hobbies, they have families, they have churches, they have volunteering, whatever it is that you do, you want to make sure that the job works with the rest of your life. You can ask about if there are benefits and what those look like.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it too early in that phase to ask about benefits or salary? Because sometimes when you go to the job post, you don't see the salary.
Right.
Sometimes it happens. So is it too early to ask?
So this is a tricky question. And I guess the way that I'll answer it is the first questions you ask are going to seem like the most important things to you. So if the first thing you ask is how much money will I get paid, then it seems like money is the most important thing and you don't really care about this job. So I would say ask some questions about the job and the company first, because that shows that you're interested in the job, you're interested in the company, and you care about that. And then you can ask about what are the salaries, what are the benefits, things
And
like that.
benefits,
You've already
okay.
shown
So
them
company,
care about
job,
the
and
company.
then salary benefits. Okay,
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
So let's move on to the in-person job interview.
Okay.
So what are the most common questions? Obviously, we all are assuming that depending on the job you're applying, the level of the job, those questions change, right? But I also know there's like common questions.
Yeah.
What those common questions are?
Yeah, some of them are strangely difficult to answer. One of the most common questions I hear is, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like an easy question, but what do I say?
And very open, broad
It's
questions.
very open, right? Like, I'm not going to give you a 40-year history of my entire life. I have to pick and choose what are the most important things that I want you to know about me right now.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one to think about and prepare for. Because even if you get to the interview and they don't ask you, tell me about yourself, if you know what you would say to that answer, you'll be able to use bits and pieces of that preparation to answer other questions in the interview. So I would say be able to like have a concise answer, like 2 minutes or less, to tell me about yourself, because you'll be able to use it in different ways throughout the interview process. And you can also use it in networking, because networking is a lot about just telling people about yourself.
Yeah. One of the things that I have always read is that when it comes to job interviews in the US, like the way you have to answer to those questions, those answers gotta kind of like, they need to be like an example of you proving to this hiring manager or interviewer that you are good for that job in particular.
That's a really good point.
True.
Yeah, so, and you can get a lot of clues out of the job posting that you applied to, because they'll use words to describe the job, and they'll talk about things like excellent communication skills or attention to detail. And those are all clues as to what they're looking for. So if you study the job posting before the interview, you can use some of their same language in your responses. So like you read it and you know that attention to detail is very important to them because they talk about it in the job posting. Now you know when they say, tell me about yourself, you can say, well, I'm so-and-so, I am interested in working in this kitchen as a chef. I think that, my attention to detail would really help to elevate the cuisine here. Like you can start to take clues from what they write and use it to kind of reinforce that you're a good fit for what they're looking for.
Yeah, makes sense. So what any other question would you say is also very common besides the please tell me about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think another one that I hear people on my team ask a lot is, tell me something that's not on your resume. And that's a question that they ask because they want to get to know you beyond just the work part, usually they'll ask that question later on in the process once they've already sort of established that you do have a lot of what we're looking for the job.
Okay.
Because yes, you will be doing a job, but you will also be sitting next to us and we might eat lunch together and you'll come to like the holiday party or the summer picnic, right? Like,
you're going to be part of a team. Yeah,
exactly. Like we're all humans and we want to understand, yes, we need to know if you're qualified for the job, but we also want to know who you are and what you're like as a person. We want to get to know you a little bit.
And
so,
I think that will also help like to kind of like understand if that person will adapt to the culture of the company or that team in particular too, right?
Yeah, and that they might bring something new to the team.
Yeah.
So like if we have a team where everyone's like very introverted, it might be interesting to bring somebody a little more extroverted onto that team because it brings something new. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that kind of question, but another one that's very, very common is, why do you want this job? Or why do you want to work
here? That's a good one.
Yeah, why do you want to work at the company, or why do you want this particular job. And that's one that you don't want to fumble. You want to have an answer to that one. You want to be able to answer that one. So that's another good thing to practice before the interview is, what will I say when they ask me why I want this job? I think one of the only bad answers to that question is, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, if you're just like, I don't know why I want this job, or I don't really care.
Or I just need a job.
I just need a job. I don't care what job. I just need a job. Like, those are bad answers, but almost anything else would be a good answer, right? You could say that you want to learn new skills, or you're interested in joining this industry, or that you feel like you'll be really good at it. Any number of answers would be good. There's only a few bad ones.
No, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think that would be like a very bad one. Like, I just want a job. I just need a job.
Yeah.
I just need to pay my bills. Something like that, right? So what about the do's and don'ts when it comes to job interviews? Things that normally you recommend to job seekers to do and not to do.
Yes. Do be on time.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Always. I mean, I've definitely had many times where someone called me frantically 10 minutes before their interview, just saying like, oh my God, traffic is so bad. I'm running late. I'm so sorry. It's okay, but it's not ideal. And it makes you feel very stressed out going into, like, if you're the one that's late for the job interview, you're already super stressed out and you're thinking about other things and you're just not putting your best stuff out there. So do yourself a favor, plan ahead, get there early. If you get there too early, find a coffee shop around the corner, sit in your car. You know what I mean? Like, chill out. If you're early, it's better to have 20 minutes that you're just like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and practice my answers than to be running 10 minutes late.
Okay. So how early should I be?
I think if you're early to the actual building where your interview is, 10 to 15 minutes early is usually good. Okay. Not every company has like a great waiting room. Like, I've worked at places where we didn't have a waiting room at all. And so if you were too early, it was just very awkward for you because there wasn't really like a place for you to sit and you were like in the middle of everything. It was just felt weird. But you can also, when they schedule your interview, that's a good question to ask, you know, like, say like, I like to arrive a few minutes early. Is there any, you know, should I not be too early? Like, what would be appropriate? So you can always ask. If you're not sure, it's totally fine to ask. Yeah. Another do is dress for the occasion.
Okay. Fair enough.
And again, if you're not sure, you can always ask. Like, my company is very, very casual. We wear jeans and t-shirts to work every day.
That's nice.
So, yeah, it is nice.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So, but when candidates ask, what should I wear to the interview? I'm able to tell them, you know, you don't need to wear a suit. We're very casual here. If you prefer to wear a suit, go for it. But we're very casual, so feel free to dress like business casual. Okay. But if they don't ask, then they might come in like the full suit and they might feel awkward wearing a suit surrounded by people wearing jeans and t-shirts. They might feel weird, and you want to avoid any extra anxiety and weirdness at a job interview, right? Because like, job interviews have enough anxiety and weirdness in and of themselves. So I think do dress for the occasion.
Be on time.
Do make eye contact.
Okay.
I don't know if we're going to be shaking hands after this. Usually I talk about
I know.
We're not sure.
Yeah, we're living in a crazy world right now. So, but normally, under normal circumstances, you gotta do the handshake.
Under normal circumstances, handshakes are very appropriate. They may not be for a while, but eye contact, that's always appropriate. So make eye contact, smile, look like you want to be there, and try to bring a little bit of energy, right? Like, same as I've talked about this with you before, Luisela. Same as the first date, right? Yeah. If you show up to the first date and you like won't look the person in the eye and you're talking really slow and silent, like, that doesn't send a message that I'm excited to be on this date, right?
Yeah, that's true.
If your date shows up and they're smiling and they look you in the eye and they're listening and they're asking questions, they want to be on this date, and that makes you want to be on this date.
Yeah.
So when you're at a job interview, it's a little bit like dating, where you can show enthusiasm and make eye contact and ask questions, all the same things you would do on a date. And that helps it to go well.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That it makes sense. And I guess the resume, does it make sense to bring a copy of the resume when we normally do that if um the hiring manager or the interviewer already has the resume? Because that's how you
So
apply for the job.
and maybe this is a little old school of me, but I still say bring the resume. They may not want it, they may not need it, you may go home with it. That's okay, you can reuse it at the next job interview. They're not gonna go bad.
I
Um,
agree. I feel the same way. I
yeah,
feel like
but
it shows like you're responsible and serious
yeah,
about it.
it's
So
funny.
more formal.
My husband just got a job with the city of Philadelphia a couple months ago, and when he was interviewing, he's been in graduate school for like 7 years, so he hasn't been on any job interviews in a really long time.
So
And
then he was
so
really nervous when we went to that
it was
interview.
it was basically job club in my house every day. I was answering his questions and coaching him. But he was asking me, he was like, do I need to bring my resume? And I was like, honestly, I would, just because you don't want to show up and have them say, oh, do you have your resume? And then you have to be like, no, I didn't bring it, right? That, again, that makes you feel stressed out and bad. Better to have it and not need it. And so I told him, I was like, print them out. Here's some nice paper, do the whole thing. He brought them, they didn't need them.
Yeah.
But I
But
was
it's a
like,
good tip.
yeah, I still think it's a good tip to bring the resume, even if you don't need it. Way better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Oh, by the way, I wanna ask you this question. I don't think I have asked you this question before during job club. What about makeup and cologne or perfume?
Okay, that's actually a really good question. So cologne or perfume, I would stay away from for a job interview. And really only because you don't know if the people that you're meeting with might have like allergies or sensitivities.
Okay.
So it's just easier to skip. I mean, we're the deodorant, but skip the cologne and the perfume.
Okay. Hygiene first.
And for makeup, absolutely, you can totally wear makeup to a job interview, but make
Is it
sure
okay
that
not to?
it's also okay not to. Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of your preference. Like if makeup makes you feel kind of more professional, more powerful, more ready, like go for it. But if you're a person who doesn't want to wear makeup, you shouldn't have to become someone that you're not to get that job, right? Now, there's probably industries where that might be weird, like if you're looking to be like a makeup consultant.
Or
But I don't
maybe you are gonna play like for
like
the,
wearing makeup.
the
I don't know.
entertainment industry too, something like that, right?
Right. And I don't know, like if you don't like wearing makeup, I don't know if you'd want that job, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think if you don't want to wear makeup, don't wear makeup. I will say if you do wear makeup, make sure it's appropriate for the environment. So if you're interviewing at like a daycare center,
Okay.
don't wear the same makeup that you would wear to the nightclub, right? You know, like you just want to make
Gotta
sure.
be like light makeup.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the don'ts. What I cannot do.
Okay.
What I shouldn't do.
Um, yeah, I mean, one really big don't is don't speak badly about your past jobs.
That's a good one.
Not a good look. And that can be tricky, especially if you've had, I mean, I think most of us unfortunately have had bad job experiences, whether it was a bad job or a bad manager. But and they'll ask you, they'll say, you know, tell me about that job. And it might be biting your tongue, trying not to say bad things, but try to be really diplomatic. So if you had issues with your manager, you don't want to say like, my manager was a jerk and he always had it out for me and that's why I left. You want to try to spin that into, you know, the management style there was a little bit different from what I'm used to. And I found that I wasn't able to be as successful as I was hoping because they, you know, I wasn't able to utilize all of these skills that I think I'd be able to utilize in this job. So you can speak honestly, but you don't have to tell every gruesome detail. You know, you want to keep it classy, keep it diplomatic. Because we assume if we hear somebody in an interview speaking really badly about past employers, we assume that if we hire you, we're the next employer that you're going to speak badly of.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know, it kind of is, even if that's not the case. And so try to be as diplomatic as you can. And if you have had bad experiences in recent jobs, start to think before the interview, okay, how can I talk about this in a positive, maybe not positive, but in a constructive way, right? Like, you don't have to pretend that a terrible experience was great, because that's not true. That, you know, like, you shouldn't lie, but
yeah, exactly.
Find a way to do it in a way that, like, almost maybe imagine that jerky boss is standing behind you. Right? Like, if they could hear everything you're saying, how would you say it in a way that isn't like attacking them, you know?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So that's like a big fat don't.
Big fat don't.
What would be another one?
I think using just like one word answers, you know, or like really giving very little information. So if they're like,
oh,
what, you know, like, why do you want this job? Because I want to be a chef. Okay, I mean, well, I know you want to be a chef. You applied for the chef job. Why do you want this chef job? Right?
So no short answers, but not too long answers either?
Yeah, you want to...
But it's okay to talk a lot during a job interview.
It's okay to talk more. And honestly, if your interviewer is any good at interviewing, they'll guide you. If you're talking too long about one thing, they'll guide you to the next thing. They'll be like, that's a really interesting, in the interest of time, I want to move on to the next question, but maybe we can talk more about that at the end of the interview if we get through everything. But you want to give them information they don't already have. So saying, I want to be a chef, we know that you applied for a chef job. That's why you're here today. So why do you want to be a chef at this restaurant, right? Like, give them a little bit more information. Same thing with dating, right? Like, if you go on a date with somebody who only gives one word answers or really short answers, you get tired of asking them questions almost, because it's really hard to keep the conversation going because they're not saying anything. So the interview really is about you talking. So don't be afraid to give it more than a sentence or two.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any other one?
I think the only other one, and it kind of circles back to what I was talking about a minute ago, is just try to be positive and not negative. Because again, like, we're looking not only for somebody who has the skills and experience to perform the job, we're also looking for somebody who's going to sit next to us and have lunch with us and all of that stuff, like a person who's going to become a part of our community. And if you come across as someone who's always negative, like, we don't want that in our community. So try to stay positive, smile, you know, even if there's things you don't like, maybe try to shift towards something you do like, something that does make you smile.
Yeah, and prepare for the interview, right?
Yeah, and prepare.
Read the job description.
Yep, read the job description before the phone interview, reread the job description before the in-person interview, like, really prepare before every single step. And I like to, and again, this is a little bit old school, but I like to have like a little notebook, and on each page I have like, okay, so today I applied for this job at this company, and then next page, this job at this. So every job has its own little page in the notebook. So then when somebody contacts me, I can be like, oh, okay, here's the company. Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that job right now. And I can take notes on that page. So I learn things like what the salary is. I learn things like what the schedule is. I write it down. So then if I have multiple interviews with different companies for different jobs, at the end, I can compare. I can like go back and say, well, this one pays more, but this one has better benefits. But this one I think I'll learn the most at. And then I have all the information to refer back to, and I'm not just trying to like remember.
It's kind of like to build your own tracker, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Your own little like.
Yeah. Because one thing is for sure, when we're looking for jobs, we have to apply for a lot of jobs in order to like.
After 10 jobs, it's really hard to keep them all straight.
Yeah. Yeah,
And both,
that's true.
we've already talked about how important it is to be prepared for these conversations. So if you're trying to keep it all straight up in your head, you're probably going to get mixed up at some point or forget that you already talked about that thing with somebody, or you know what I mean? Like if you have a system to track all of your conversations, it just makes you seem more prepared, more professional, and like a better person to hire. Because a lot of times at the end of the process, we're like, okay, we have this person and we have this person, and they're both equally good, but we only have one role to hire for. Who do we pick? And so a lot of times then it comes down to who seems like a better part of our community, or who seemed more prepared, or who seems more interested in working with us. So those little things really can make a difference in the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. It actually happened to me that I got hired. The reason why I got hired was because it went down to the results of the references when they checked. So yeah. So it was there was me and another candidate, and we were like very similar. The background, we were also from the same school, same university. Like we have a lot of similarities. We applied for the job, but we didn't. I didn't know until actually I didn't know that she applied for the job until they hired me. Later I found out, and I was curious the reason why they hired me and not her, and that was the reason, the reference. It came
Yeah.
down to
Yeah. So it's,
which actually makes you think how important is to establish good relationships with people.
Yep.
Like your classmates, your colleagues, your coworkers, your supervisors, even if, like you said at some point in their conversation today, like not necessarily is the best supervisor or the best coworkers in the world, but it's important to kind of like try to keep as possible good relationships, because you don't know when those people can refer you, going back to professional networking, right?
Yeah.
And they can help you to get a job.
Exactly. Or when you may need their help because you need a reference, and if you have a good relationship with them, they're going to be happy to be your reference.
Yeah, that's true. My last question for you would be, any website that would you recommend that provides like good information to prepare for a job interview, Beth?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resources.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. Like, there's way too many, but which one in particular you like and
I
you
mean,
think
again,
is would be helpful?
LinkedIn's blog has, if you're looking for a job, LinkedIn's blog has a ton of content that's going to be really relevant to you. There's another site called The Muse, MUSE.
Okay.
That's all sort of job seeker resources and references and information. A lot of people are writing about this stuff on medium.com, the blogging platform. So independent people will sort of write their own guides and information about that as well. But yeah, there's definitely no shortage of information to be had out there.
Yeah, way too many. That's why I kind of like wanted to ask you for,
Yeah.
one
actually,
or two.
one more that I just thought of. Fairy God Boss.
I don't think I have heard about that one.
Fairy God Boss. They have a lot of resources about just sort of like having a job, getting a job, keeping a job, growing your career. So it's more than just finding a job. It's like a whole career website, but they have some good information there.
Good to know. I personally like balanced careers. I like
Balanced
because
careers
they keep it very
too.
simple. I really like that one.
Yeah, balanced careers.
Like and I have used it at some point when to prepare myself for job interviews, to be honest. Yeah. So I'm gonna take that one. Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Beth. I mean, it is a lot of information, but it's very great information. Especially like I said in the very beginning, like coming from you, because you're in the field, so you see this a lot, and you see the common mistakes, and but you also see like those pieces of behavior that that help people to get a job. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
I
so
was
much.
happy to be here today.